I now call on Baillie. Miss Baillie, around about 6 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Let me start by thanking the members and clerks of the Devolution Further Powers Committee for their work in bringing this report before the Chamber today. I am pleased that the Scottish Government's approach has been to take this unanimous report to use as the framework for discussion with the UK Government about the draft clauses that give effect to the Smith Agreement. And as the committee has said, all we want to see is that the letter and spirit of the Smith Agreement is fully translated into a legislative package which will be contained in the first Queen's Speech of the new United Kingdom Parliament. Now, in the very short time available to me, I want to touch on three particular areas: public engagement, the fiscal framework and welfare. That said, there are a number of other technical and drafting issues that the committee explores fully in their report, and I commend the detail of that to the Chamber. One example of which is the need to tighten the wording of the clauses on equality provisions to ensure that the legislation allows for quotas to be set for the boardrooms of public bodies which the majority in this chamber support. The lack of time to cover all of these issues in the chamber in debate today doesn't mean that they are any less important, and I am grateful to the committee for taking the time to scrutinise all of these for the Parliament. But let me turn to the first issue of public engagement. The Smith Commission was undoubtedly a swift process. The Commission members worked at a truly electrifying pace. But there is a need for more widespread understanding of what the powers are intended to be transferred. It is the case that if you asked any number of people, a substantial number indeed, are not aware of the powers that have actually been transferred to the Parliament in 2012, never mind what is proposed by Smith. So we should use this as an opportunity to have that dialogue, to talk about implementation, because having the power is one thing, actually using it and how you use it is a much more interesting discussion. So let's take this opportunity both to inform, to discuss and to listen as well. Secondly, there is the fiscal framework. There are substantial powers over taxation coming to this Parliament. Some indeed came to this Parliament for April 2016. Others flowing from the Smith Agreement could be by 2020 or indeed earlier. The report made clear that there was agreement with the draft legislative clauses, but that the key issue, which of course the Cabinet Secretary has highlighted, is one of implementation. Making sure that the Scottish Government and Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs talk to each other about the practicalities, defining residency, arrangements for collection and so on seems eminently sensible. And I concur with much of what the Cabinet Secretary said about making sure the fiscal framework is robust. Similarly, with VAT assignment and with the much quoted phrase of no detriment, there needs to be a much clearer understanding of what this in practice means. Now, one SNP MSP, who shall remain nameless because I think they said this to me in jest, defined no detriment as getting full fiscal autonomy for Scotland, but not worrying if the sums didn't add up, because you could always just shout no detriment and the UK Government would bail us out. A bit like having one's cake and eating it, and I'm sure that isn't the SNP's position on this important matter. But in this and in other areas, intergovernmental relationships are critical. We do need a shared understanding, a shared evidence base to ensure that our legislation and approach is sound. Now, far be it for me to point out to the SNP and indeed the Tories that megaphone diplomacy of the kind that we've seen recently is unlikely to be conducive to that mature and sensible relationship in the interests of our country. But I do recognise that much of this is political theatre. But with all this new financial responsibility comes the need for much more robust and independent financial scrutiny. The Scottish Government is consulting on giving the Fiscal Commission legislative underpinning, and I very much welcome that. But it must do more than that. They should be truly independent from government. None of them should occupy a dual role as an advisor of government and to scrutinise in an independent function. They should have teeth to properly hold the Scottish Government to account for the nation's finances. There should be nothing for any of us to fear from that degree of transparency. Thirdly, let me turn to the area of welfare, because this is perhaps where the UK Government has been most disappointing in their draft clauses. The Smith Agreement was clear. The Scottish Parliament should have the ability to create benefits in devolved areas, but it should also be able to top up reserved benefits if it so wished. These particular draft clauses illustrate, I believe, the behind-the-scenes efforts of the DWP to thwart the agreement, and it is simply not good enough. I believe in a UK-wide system of social security, guaranteeing a minimum safety net for every person across the United Kingdom. But I do strongly believe that this Parliament should be able to enhance those benefits to reflect different but specific needs in devolved nations. So in the welfare clauses, the UK Government does need to redraft so that the spirit and substance of the Smith Agreement is delivered. Already, though, the Government is illustrating that the debate goes further. The Labour Party indeed wanted the full devolution of housing benefit, something that wasn't supported by the majority within the Smith Commission. And the reason for wanting that is we want to abolish the bedroom tax, but also to look at how we better use the money to begin an ambitious programme of house building. But can I say, we need to spend as much time, if not more, on bedding down the powers we have and the powers that are coming, as we do debating the powers that we would also like to see. Devolution, though, can't simply be about transferring power from one parliament to another. That's not enough. From Westminster to Holyrood, from one set of politicians to another. We want to see power devolved further, to local authorities, to communities themselves empowered to do more. I have to confess, Presiding Officer, in closing, the SNP have, to me, been one of the most centralising governments. I think we need to reverse that. If we believe in devolving power, and I believe it's a principle shared across the chamber, then we need to move that power out of Edinburgh too.
Many thanks.